All right, everybody. So we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Coach Smithy. I'm a coach at the Colony High School. First and foremost, I'd just like to say thank you to the Illinois High School Football Coaches Association for asking me to speak today. And those of you who reached out and who are listening in on this, I appreciate that. Whenever they reached out to me originally, they basically opened the floor for what I wanted to speak for as a topic. We've got lots of qualified coaches that are here that are talking about positions and schematics of offense and defense. And the first thing that really came to mind for me was what could you take away that would be the most meaningful thing for you? Maybe not just positions or necessarily football skills, but skills that will improve your program, will improve your coaching, and hopefully your relationship with the kids. And in turn, show itself on the field as far as wins and losses and improving that aspect of things. So what I came up with for my topic was using Christian fundamentals to build a winning foundation. I got asked before this call, how is this going to work out, or how does it work out, with you and your coaching staff at the Colony and a bunch of others, basically using these fundamentals and these Christian ideas and everything else in a world where, there's so much pushback on things, religion and involvement in schools and that sort of thing. Which is a great question. I think if you do it correctly, you really won't have that pushback as much. You're still going to have people, of course, who are going to complain about anything. But overall, I think if you're not pushing things on people, I think if you go about it the right way and you use the teachings and the morals created in that, and we teach those to our kids, I think we'll be able to see the benefits of that, and the community will also be able to see the benefits of that as well. And so I think whenever we can see, obviously, people see their kids improve, then emotionally see their kids improve as far as, obviously on the field, but also just as maturing and everything else that's kind of involved in that process. People are a lot less, or I guess a lot more hesitant to actually, complain about that and to make a big deal about that. So I think if you go about it in the right way and you're not just shoving things down people's throats, and it's not, solely about religion or anything like that, then I think people are going to be a lot more receptive to it. So hang on just a second. I'm going to share my screen with you for a presentation I've put together. So bear with me because it's been a while since I've used Zoom. Let's see here. Add that there. And here we go. All right. So once again, using Christian fundamentals to create a winning foundation. As far as my accolades and titles and positions, I grew up a coaching kid, so I've seen all kinds of different programs moving around, small school coaches kids. So a lot of different schools, a lot of different programs. I also played ball at Louisiana College, which is now Louisiana Christian University, which is a D3 college. And then since then, I've kind of moved around several different programs in the public school sector. Right now, the Colony High School, I am at a public school. And so, this just goes to show you kind of what I'm going to be talking about today, that this can be carried across any board, any platform, any sport, as far as, private schools to public schools. We're a large public school. And so it is possible, especially if you carry it about the right way. And so currently I'm the academic coordinator, JV B team head coach. I was defensive line head coach, running backs. Now I'm the assistant offensive line and also the tight ends and H's coach, as well as a varsity basketball assistant. As far as accolades stuff, I'm just going to speed through this because I'd like to get to the message portion of it. Louisiana College, I was academic all-conference there, elected to the National Football Foundation Hampshire Honor Society. The Colony High School, been here for, like I said, 10 years. We've made playoff appearances, I believe it was 7 out of those 10 years. And during that time, when I was coaching running backs for those 6 years, I had 4 kids that came through that are Division I athletes now, or just finished up anyway. Also coached the U.S. national football team. They reached out to do that. We coached the middle school, um, I guess, USA bowl game there that was held in Arlington. All right, so kind of the thing that planted this whole idea and concept into my head. Bobby Bowden, of course, recently passed away, and right after, I guess, right before he died, he was kind of looking back on his life, reflecting it, and he gave a couple of quotes on that. And this one stood out to me a lot, and it really spoke to me. And it's faith is the most important thing in the world to me. It's the greatest strength I've had. It's helped me get through the hard times. You're not going to win every one of your football games. I've always said I'm not going to make football my God. A lot of coaches put so much into coaching football games that they have nothing left. I've never made football my priority. My priorities are my faith and my dependence of God. And so in that, Bobby Bowden won a extremely successful coach, a very notable coach, and you can kind of see where his priorities lay, but yet he still has, he still has his priorities put in this order. Football was not number one on his list, but yet he was still able to go on and create very successful programs, and then very successful football players as well. So why embed Christianity into coaching? Why even go throughout all this? All right, I'm not here to preach to you today. I don't have any type of seminary degree. I'm not if you want a theology class, then we can discuss that later, but I'm not going to get into any of those specifics there. But why should we actually embed Christianity coaching? Why does it matter? I do know that there's some of you who are listening that may not be Christians. So that's fine. You can still use a lot of these teachings to enhance your program and also enhance your coaching ability. So first and foremost, Christianity, it builds leadership. How do you build leadership with it? Well, you've got morals and respect and patience and leadership and accountability and things that we want our students, athletes to have. It also offers guidance. There's so many times where, we've got kids that they don't know what to do after football. What happens when that terrible career-ending injury happens to a kid out of nowhere, and they put all their stock into football? What next? What happens when they graduate? What happens when there are no more steps left? And so in that, this one gives them some short-term goals as far as, improving themselves. And then it also gives them long-term goals. So they're not just left with this void once football ends. And we all know who played football, that once you step off that field for the last time, there is that kind of void in you. And the what next step, especially after you've done it so long, or if you played all the way through into college, it's a little uncertain as far as what happens next. And it also creates unity. Think about it. You want unity on a team. You want unity on a coaching staff. And so with all that being said, this is going to give something that's not just a sense of unity as far as a team, but it goes far beyond that. It gives a closer bond and relationship to those people. Also gives stability. It teaches people to stay focused, have that type of attitude and mentality where it's consistent, where we don't just let the bad things, the negatives that happen to us, which will happen to your football team, which will happen to your program. All right, it happens to all of us. Go down into a downward spiral to where, there's no positive outcome. It also improves morale. When you're looking at your teams and that sort of thing, it teaches hope and perseverance and responsibility instead of that spiral that we were just talking about. So examples of scripture in sports, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of them. The whole reason I put this slide on here was to essentially show you that even in scripture, in the Bible, Old Testament and New Testament, they do have certain passages that focus on sports, which says to me that sports were important back then, and obviously sports are important now. And so the stuff that we'll be talking about today, it's not just ancient jumbo stuff. It's still applied today. Sports. Yes, we've had sports as far as different types of sports, how they've elevated, but sports have been around. That hasn't changed. And so a lot of the messages, even though they may be thousands of years old, they still are applied today. All right, so kind of how this all has come back to me. My coaching, I know from myself, and looking back, I wasn't a preacher's kid or anything like that. I grew up in just a traditional home. Both parents were coaches. I'll be honest with you, when I played football, I was about as far from any type of this stuff that I'm about to tell you as you could possibly get. I just enjoyed going out there and cracking skulls, to be honest with you. I did so in basketball too, and that led to some not good things. So with that being said, though, I'm speaking from experience on all of this stuff here. Everything I've come up with today have been researched, but more so, it's been lived by me. When I first started coaching, and those of you who are younger coaches may relate to this, those of you who are older may very well be able to look back on your time and think the same thing. But I'd like to apologize really to the kids that I coached my first couple of years. When I began coaching, I had just gotten out of being a police officer. I'd had college football in my background as well. So when I went into it with this very authoritative personality. I yelled probably a majority of my time through my first 2 years coaching. I was quick to jump on people. What I said goes. It wasn't about the kids, really, to be honest with you. It was about getting wins. And so that's kind of what I really push for. If you do what I told you, you're getting the win. And if you don't, then it's simple. We're going to take a loss, and it's on you. And so I did lots of yelling. I can't honestly remember because it's been so many years now, 15 years. I don't remember specifically how I addressed the kids, but more so than often, it was in a very negative manner. I was very quick to jump on that. And so really I continued that until probably my first year here at the colony. I didn't live by any of the stuff I'm talking about, but I actually got asked by a coworker to go to lunch. A new guy getting asked by as our defensive back coach, I believe at the time, his name was Isaiah Young. He invites me to lunch, and so I'm not going to say no. And so, being a new guy on staff, I go to lunch with him. I invite one of the other new guys to come with us too, and so all three of us go out to work or after work, and we go eat. And so when we go eat, we're sitting there, and I'm thinking we're going to talk football because brand new guy, or we're going to talk about the program or something along those lines. And when we sit down, he mentions football at first, but then the conversation immediately turns. He gets real serious, real solemn. All of a sudden, he says, "Hey, you go to church? What about you? You believe in God?" And then he starts going into this long string of questioning about Christianity and faith and that sort of thing. And to me, to be honest with you, I really didn't know how to respond to a lot of it. I'd gone to church since I was little, but I did not. I mean, he was coming with questions left and right. I mean, ask why to everything. Why do you believe? Why do you think this? And so he starts going in this real deep conversation, and I'm sitting there expecting football talk. And so as he's talking, I'm just thinking, man, I'm thinking about myself, and I'm having to self-reflect, and that brought up a whole lot of things. But I also got this real deep found respect for him. Here's this guy that doesn't know me, doesn't know this coworker that I brought along, and all of a sudden he opens up the floodgates as far as questioning, and then he also, I sat there and had to reflect on myself, and in turn, after I got to reflecting on myself, I started digging deeper into things, and then I saw my whole life change, and really, reflecting on it too was my coaching style, and the way I coached and how I thought about coaching. A lot of that changed very drastically following that conversation. I don't think I've ever told him thank you. So if this video ever circulates to you, man, I appreciate that, because, man, it did wonders for me. But I remember one thing specifically as we're sitting there. One of the first things he said after we sat down, before he started questioning, was he said, "Man, I don't think that it's coincidence that I asked you to eat here today and you came with me. I don't think it's coincidence that you asked him over there to come sit here." He goes, I think it was willed by God that both of you are here for a reason today. And looking back on that conversation, I can say that I honestly agree. And so, those of you who are watching this right now, I don't think that it's coincidence that you've sat through this long, that you're joining me, that you're watching this today. You're here for a reason. You are put here for a reason. This message is for you, just like that message was for me that day. And so, I encourage you to take this to heart, and hopefully that you take something away today that will help you, will help your program and your kids and community and everybody else around you. So I was, kind of approached it. They found that they okayed, I guess, my idea to present this to you, but it was kind of hard to think of a way to do this because like I said, I'm not a preacher. I'm not going to sit here and give you just Bible verse after Bible verse or anything like that because, by doing so, that's taken away from the whole point of, me talking at a football clinic to begin with. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down. I've got the first section, I'm going to be talking about your coaching staff. And the second section, I'm going to be talking about your kiddos and how to impact coaches and your coworkers, and also how to impact your student athletes here. And so the way I decided to do this was I gave a scripture verse that applies to the ideas that I'm going to be giving to you to strengthen your relationship with the coaching staff and with your kids. I'm not going to read them all, but I am going to present them on the board. So if you want to read them here, feel free to do so. I'm just going to kind of skim over parts of them, give you the main idea, and then go into my talking points. So basically what this verse is saying in Corinthians here is that, and obviously it's applied to church roles, but that each person has their own specific skill set. Each person, your body, for instance, your eyes, they're used for one thing. Your hands are not used for the same thing as your eyes. Your nose, and same thing, your feet, your legs. And so each part of your body is made for a specific role. And so all those roles work together to create, obviously, the final product, the wanted final product there. And so, meaning, if we transfer it over into the coaching world, every coach on staff has a unique jobs and skill set. We all have our own strengths, our own weaknesses. Like I said, there's guys on here that are speaking on this clinic that, man, y'all, your X's and O's, ins and outs, and schemes, and what to do in every specific situation. On the other hand, there's guys who are great with relationships. There's guys who've been around building programs or who are good at recruiting or that sort of thing. And so everyone has their own specific skill set, whether it be social or just knowledge or whatever it may be. And so first and foremost, trust your coaches. Don't micromanage them. If you are a head coach, you have hired the people on that staff for a reason. Each person on that staff you felt qualified to hire at some point in time. And so with that, trust them to do their job. If you hired them for a position, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, trust them to do their job. All right. Don't micromanage. There's too many times where I've seen coaches and programs, especially, younger coordinators and things like that, where they just have to have every single bit of control over everything, where, instead of just kind of going with the scheming, then they start stepping over into, running drills and programs and things like that. And they start taking over and basically overshadowing the actual coach himself. Don't micromanage them. They're there for a reason. You put them there for a reason. The second one, recognize one another's strengths. Put them in a position, if you are a head coach or a coordinator, put your coaches in a position that they can showcase their strengths. Obviously, you're not going to put somebody who is a terrible speaker in charge of a social media job or a PR job, okay? In the coaching world, like for instance, we've got one guy who's a junior high coach. He was very bought into the program, very involved. And after a few years, we moved him up, and he loves to talk. Great at talking, does a good job socializing with others. And so, he's newer guy as far as positions and everything else, but he comes up and we end up making him in charge of our recruiting. He does a great job at recruiting our kiddos. We've got hundreds of schools that'll come in uh, to watch our athletes each spring. And so he does a great job at that. And my hat's off to our head coach and our coordinators for putting him in position to do so. He enjoys doing it. He's very good at it. He's very bought into the kids and supportive of our kids. And so he makes a really strong candidate for that position and does a great job there. Understand that each coach has different aspirations. If a coach, for instance, you got a junior high coach who just wants to be a junior high coach, or you've got a position coach who just wants to be a position coach, man, you've hit the jackpot. A lot of coaches will automatically have this negative connotation in their mind where, oh, that means they've got no work ethic, they're lazy, they've got no goals in their future. That's not entirely true. And it's not true, especially when you see the coaches, if they are doing their job, if they're putting their effort into things and they are doing the job that you assign them at junior high or at their position or whatever it may be, if they are doing that job that you assign them and they're doing a very good job at it, there's nothing wrong with them not wanting to move up to a head coach or AD or something at some point one day. Um, like I said, you're lucky to have coaches like that on your staff because that means they're going to specialize in their areas and do what you put them there for. Um, Also, lastly, own your own positions and roles. All right. All this is being said, as far as position coaches, this goes back to you now. If you have a position that you were given, if you are a coordinator, if you are a head coach, whatever, own your specific position, own your specific role. I got my tail chewed out this past year because I'm the academic coordinator. I've been for years now. And this year we had a lot of our freshmen fail. You can blame it on COVID since they've taken a year and a half away from them. And it's the first year where they've actually had to sit here full time at school and attempt to pass. I can make all kinds of reasons why. Uh, but in the end, man, we had them fail, and that was on me. I got chewed out for it. I can come up with lots of reasons why. I may be correct in my reasons why, but the fact of the matter is, it's still on me because I was put in charge of that. Um, Luckily, we ended up getting things turned and ended up having 11 academic all-state kids in varsity. And so, we were able to turn that around. But that's because I had to, own my role. Whatever, if it's a minor role, man, own that minor role. If it's a major role, same thing. You're still being held accountable for it. All right. Speaking wise, let no corrupt talk come out of your mouths, but only such as good for building people up. Your words reflect your work ethic. Your words determine the direction of your program. They determine the direction of your career. They determine the direction of your marriage, your family. Words are going to be a huge thing when it comes to life. And so with that, first and foremost, build other coaches up. Refrain from constantly criticizing or giving negative comments. In the coaching world, it is super easy for us to get caught up. We kind of have the good old boy system, at least, a lot of the coaching staffs I've been around, where, you get very comfortable with people, lots of joking and then just being in an atmosphere where it's straight guys, lots of negative comments and criticisms and menace jokes. But sometimes we just kind of make it our normal. We get to where that's all we hear or all we say. And man, it wears down after a while on those relationships, on those people. And you start kind of losing those. So what we meant initially as, kind of jokes and things like that to bring people together, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But if that's all that's coming out of your mouth, those relationships are going to deteriorate. And you're going to lose those people as far as, loyalty or anything like that because of those comments. Be consistent in your words and actions. Don't say something and then act or do completely differently around other people. I was laughing because this, I guess, past fall, my daughters were out of school, so I had to bring them to work with me because My wife had just started working. So they come to work with me, and I leave them in the field house for half a day, and while we're practicing and that sort of thing. And so my kids are in there, and for that first half a day while I'm out there, a bunch of coaches are coming in and that sort of thing. I come in after practice that day, and I guess my church hands out, I guess, like little calling card looking things that are invitations that say, we'll pray for you, that sort of thing, invites them to church. Well, I guess my daughter had taken a stack of them from church. And when I came back from practice, I noticed that she had put one on every single one of our assistant coaches' desks. Um, inviting them to church. And the reasoning why is because she said she learned some new words that day. So, we can't sit there and go out and punish our kids, for cussing or something like that when we're doing that same thing behind closed doors there, or even in public. You can't say, a kid shouldn't act in a certain way, and then we act a certain way too. Um, Also, abstain from frequent workplace complaints. It is so easy for us to get caught up in complaints, man. There are so many times that a kid's going to let you down, or something upstairs at the school is going to come into play, and you're just frustrated and tired of things, or community members, or parents, or teams that are not doing what you want them to do. It's so easy for us to get down. Like I said, I'm head coach of the B team, man, and and those of you who've had B teams or have coached the B teams, um, the struggle's real. And so it's easy for you to get caught up in that stuff and sit there and just harp on it the entire time and just kind of let it eat away at you. And there's nothing good that's going to come from that. You're going to sit there, and it's going to make your workplace miserable. It's going to make you miserable. And in turn, you're going to go home. It's going to make your home life miserable. Your words determine what that's going to be. It's going to build others up, or it's going to tear them down. It's real simple. And the same thing for yourself. If you're constantly thinking in the negative, then don't be surprised if your life is living in the negative. On the other hand, if you're looking for positives and things, you're going to make positive things happen, or you're going to find them, one of the two. In which case, even if you're just finding the positives, that's at least moving forward instead of taking a step backwards. All right, listening and composure. You got this one here. It says, be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. And this is something that we could probably use a whole lot more of, or at least a reminder we could use a lot more of. Intentionally take the time to hear before you're speaking. It's very common that coaches will not understand the full situation before we just, boom, we pop off because we only see our side of it. We don't see the kids' side of it. Be open to ideas that people bring to the table. Your coaching staff, especially if they're assembled from a bunch of different places, our head coach does a really great job of this. Each year when we open up, we've hired some new guys, and we'll sit there and we'll have a coaches meeting. And in that meeting, he will ask, hey, how do y'all do this? Or how did you do this here? Or do you have any ideas from that? And so he does a really good job of being open to these ideas that other programs do of how they run weight programs or even practices or what times and that sort of thing. So be open to those ideas. You don't obviously have to take all those ideas, but at least listen to them and consider those ideas before you're making your decision. Listening to speak rather than listening to understand strains relationships. What do I mean by that? And being a married guy, I'm guilty of this, especially early marriage. Um, you know, when you're hearing something you don't want to hear, you're just yep, and then you're just waiting for your opportunity to speak so you can justify something instead of actually understanding the problem to begin with. We do that with kids and even other coaches a lot of times. We're just kind of letting them speak their piece, so we're looking for that window so we can just hop in and say our part instead of actually understanding what's going on. And if you do that, you're not going to build a strong relationship. Yeah, you may get your point across, but they may not receive your point the way that you think you're getting across. And so to have a strong relationship, you are going to have to listen to people speak, and you've got to have those skills. And it takes skills and it takes effort to actually do that. And in doing so, you're going to build stronger relationships. You're going to grow as a person as well. You've got to be patient. You've got to be humble. Just listening can bring an end to so many problems. And this is something that, once again, going back to my early coaching days, I wish that I would have known. I, so many times where parents complain, and man, I just want to pop. No, your kid didn't do this. It's that simple. It's black and white. And I'd cut them off while they're speaking, and I'd tell them why they were wrong. Were they wrong? Yeah, they were wrong. But the reality of it is, if I would have just let them air out their frustrations, then I would have avoided so many problems. My first big parent issue, man, I almost got in a fight at the counselor's office at my first job because I allowed a kid to quit. He wasn't doing anything. He said, "I want to quit." I said, "Fine." I said, "You won't do the punishment? You can quit." And then the dad came up, man, he threw a fit. And I guess he wanted me to force his kid to stay. And I told him, man, if I'm not going to force a kid to stay, if he's not going to buy into the program, if he's not going to show it an effort, then he's not going to be it. And man, it was a clash between us two. Uh, and I've learned so much since that moment. If I would have just let the guy talk for a while everything he said would have still been wrong, he would have at least had the tension kind of brought off his shoulders a little bit, make it seem like I'm listening rather than, just, throwing his idea back in his face. And that's something that, a lot of us can learn about. And, I'm still learning about, and I'm in my, 13th year of coaching or whatever it may be now. All right. And priorities here. If someone doesn't know how to manage his own household, how will he care for God's church? If we apply this to football, if you can't take care of your home life, how do you expect to take care of a football program? How do you expect to take care of however many kids you've got in that program or coaches that you've got in that program? The reality of it is you can't effectively do that. If you are lacking at home, you're going to be lacking at work, plain and simple. Success is going to start at home. That old saying, if mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. It does have some truth to that. But the reality of it is, if you can't handle your kids or your wife or marriage in general, then there's no possible way. If you can't handle that aspect of your life, then you're going to successfully handle football. And the reasoning why is because, going down to your priorities, man, if it's that unbalanced, you're going to lose somewhere. And whatever you lose, it's going to show. It's going to show in your personal life and everything else. Your work life is going to reflect your home life. Uh, you know, in that, for instance, I've seen many coaches during my, growing up or football career or whatever it may be. Lots of coaches who either have an exceptionally unhappy home life or who are going through a divorce or whatever. And man, the times that they're going through that stuff, that's the times where you'll see their football productivity just drop off. Why? Because their focus is elsewhere. Not only is their focus elsewhere, but man, their effort and their energy has been taken and put in somewhere else. And so, it's draining. And so if you want to maintain a good football atmosphere at school, you're going to have to maintain a good, consistent home life as well. Reflect on your priorities. It's so easy for us to just make football, kind of going back to Bobby Bowden. It's easy for us with the time that we put in there, the video and the practices and the coaches meetings and everything else. It's so easy for us to get lost in our jobs that we make football our main priority without even knowing it. You can make your family your only priority without even knowing it. And so there's a balance between things. Obviously prioritize things, have your top priority, but you got to be able to constantly check yourself to make sure that everything stays that way, because it's very easy for you to unintentionally just flip the pyramid of priorities there. And it happens so much. And by flipping those without knowing it, by spending all this time and effort and energy at work and your sole focus being work, you lose your family along the way a lot of times. And that's what we see in our coaching staff, which in turn goes back to what we said at the beginning. So how can you involve your family in work? Our coaching staff at the Colony does a really good job of this. For instance, we used to send out these wife packets at the beginning of each year. In it, each husband and the head coach actually made us do it. we'd have to write just a quick, short letter to our wife. In that packet, it would have directions to every single one of the games. It would have all this other information. It would have, their passes to get into the games and that sort of thing. And they would mail it home to our wives. And so we'd start off the year with that. So it's just something to basically integrate your work and your home life. I've seen coaching staffs that have mandatory weekly date nights. Um, it's literally a night of the week where the coach said, "Hey, you're either going to work or you're going on a date tonight with your wife." There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And they literally set a time where they required their coaches to go on a date with their wife. And so I think that was kind of an interesting idea. I hadn't actually heard of that until recently. Accommodate families on game days. We do an awesome job of that. We cone off spots for our wives to park. They pull up. We have our field house cordoned off. They'll walk in. We've got pizza for them. We've got drinks for them. We've got desserts for them. We've got this little section off area where our wives can actually sit away from a lot of our fans. That way, those who are, once again, been coaches for a while, that the stands can turn on you at the drop of a hat. So our wives are comfortable, they're taken care of, they're well fed, and we've also got a spot for our kiddos to kind of play together. And so, we look up, man, you'll see this little hill with all the kids are playing football, throwing ball, or running around. And it's just this atmosphere that kind of, once again, integrates work with family and kind of brings that balance with it. And then be flexible to family needs of coworkers. If somebody's kid's sick, like last year, for instance, where I had to bring my kids to work, obviously it's not an ideal situation. You don't want to make a habit of it, but be understanding of stuff like that. Life happens, and there is life outside of football, and you've got to take care of that. All right. And this is one of my favorite passages of scripture here. It's talking about you're going to go through trials. All right. Bad things are going to happen in life. That's just part of it. And so with those trials, it says be thankful for those or count it joy. You're not going to be happy in those trials. But with each trial is going to come positives, even though we might not be able to see it for whatever it may be. Those trials are going to be what makes us us, and how we handle those trials. So expect disappointments, expect setbacks, but in the end scheme of things, they are all necessary to the final process to building things up. If you're building a house, you've got to break your back to do that with all the stones and everything else to have that final outcome, to make that. And so first and foremost, one of our coaches, college coaches, one of his favorite sayings was improvise, adapt, and overcome. You're going to have trials. How are you going to deal with them? You're going to figure out how to deal with it at the moment. Then you're going to change it, and then you're going to overcome that situation in the end. You're going to have to figure out how to work through problems as a staff and as a community or whatever it may be. Keep faith in the difficult times, even if you can't see a good outcome. There is going to be an end to whatever type of negative situations going on. It may not be what we want, but there is going to be some type of relief in the future. We lost our starting quarterback during the summer a few years back, who we put, basically our entire offense around at a camp because he pulled his Achilles tendon and he was done, and just like that. Luckily, he ended up going to Army and on a scholarship there, but we didn't know what to do at that point in time because our entire offense, everything was built around him. We were still able to throw another quarterback in there and ended up being able to make a run of things and make the playoffs. And so, whatever it may be, how you handle that diversity, how you handle these issues, how you handle that problems, that's going to show your true character. Are you going to pop off at the drop of a hat? Or, are you going to actually be able to learn from those things, to keep composed, to strengthen yourself in those really, really bad trial times in your lives. And so that's what's going to build you as a person and as a coach and as a leader. All right, so how can you showcase Christianity to your workers? Well, you can do like what my worker did. Your coworker did. You can invite them out to a meal. I've been around staffs growing up where you'd have coach post game meals at the coach's house. You bring your families. Normally it works better when your family's in a small area, but a coach would basically have his wife set up meals, and they all come after the game for a little bit, and they watch the highlights and that sort of thing, and the kids would play together. And it was a great way to kind of build a bond with your other coaches and with those families. I still have those today. Send game day prayers to fellow coaches. All right, each game day, I just go mainly to, a lot of times, unless they don't have it, I'll go to the FCA's Twitter on game day, and they have game day prayers for coaches that are specifically for coaches. And so I'll take those and I'll just post it out to the rest of my coaches. And generally it's pretty well met. I've never had anybody complain about it. Normally people don't really complain about, you praying for them. It's just you making them pray. So if you want to show other people you care about them, that's fine. Send it out there. Post scripture verses in prominent places. Above my desk at work, I've got a lot of these verses. I've got verses about thoughts and attitudes and speaking. I've actually attached a lot of them to the end of this slideshow. So if anybody wants them, I'll gladly send them to you. I'll leave my email at the end there. You can start a coach's outreach. Our principal actually did this, where we have an outreach with our coaches and some of our principals, even teachers, where we've got a study book that we go through Wednesday mornings. And so, that's another way to do it. Obviously, just straight up inviting people. And then also, you can be flexible, like coach-wise. If you're a head coach, be flexible with meetings and schedules to accommodate for church assemblies. We actually don't go into work on Sunday until 2 o'clock. The reason why is because we're allowing us to get to church in the morning. On Wednesdays, we used to have what they call early out Wednesdays. We've kind of gotten away from it, but we used to have a set early time on Wednesdays. That way kids and coaches could go to church on Wednesday nights as well. All right, and so going to kiddos impacting our student athletes. That's me, and I guess there's 3 Division I athletes in there, and that picture right there anyway. And so impacting those kids, man, those kids that I showed you in that picture right there, they, they'll send a text message, "Hey, Pops, they're my family." And so obviously you as a coach, most of you anyway, you're going to feel that bond with those kids, especially your position kids. They are your actual kids. And so with that, how do we get to that point where you've got such tight relationships with people? And it's going to start off with this thing up here, and that's discipline. All right. The verse basically says if you withhold discipline from somebody, then you're going to actually show them that you don't care. All right. Discipline and punishment are necessary things. All right. You've got to have discipline and punishment to mold the student athletes into what you want them to be. If you fail to discipline a player, all right, it not only hurts your program in the long term, it hurts the actual player himself in the long run. I can think back to one kiddo in the past who he was being looked at by Texas and OU, heck of a football player, very easy Division I athlete. And, he's one of our top D linemen, and he didn't really get any discipline. Mom and dad would always step up to his side and help him out, and we just kind of let it slide by. And so with that, high school wise, yeah, he's a great player, but he didn't get that discipline that he probably should have received. He goes to college, he goes to Notre Dame, and then boom, he's removed from Notre Dame, not because of his play, but because he just refused to do what they were asking. He'd wear, shirts that he wasn't supposed to, or show up late to practice and things like that, maybe he could have gotten away with in the past. And so Notre Dame gets rid of him. He ends up going, Bob Stoops brings him to OU, legal issues pending from the Notre Dame days, get him kicked out of there. And now he's walking around, flipping pizzas in town. And so, a unfortunate thing, but it comes back to that discipline, and really, we shoulder some of the blame of that. Be consistent in your discipline, avoid idle threats. Don't say you're going to do nothing or do something and then don't follow through with it. All right, if you go tell them something, they have to be able to believe you, to trust you. With that all, make it a consistent punishment as well. And I think I'll talk about that here in a few. But with that consistent punishment, make sure that, for instance, I can think back to a time where there was punishment being administered to kids and I was in charge and I'm punishing kids, I think for grades or something along those lines. And then we had two of our star athletes, man, I'm not doing this. I'm going to quit. And so they walk off. I look over and sure enough, they're doing some kind of just a much easier form of punishment on the side because another coach there had essentially told them that, hey, don't quit. It's no big deal. You can do this instead. They weren't doing the same thing as the rest of the athletes. And so that's the kind of things that chip away at that discipline. It's not going to build up those kids. And with that, those kids aren't going to leave in the long run as long as they know that it's being done for their good, man. Some of those kids that I can think of, like in that picture, man, I punish the heck out of them. I'm a very firm believer in punishment. And I did a lot. And those are the same kids who will in turn send me the "Hey Pops" text. Why? Because they know that in the long run, uh, that it's because I care about them. Now in the process, man, do they hate my guts at that point in time while they're doing it? Yeah, probably. But in the long run, they have to know. And if they don't, that's where you're going to lose your kids. They have to know that it's being done for their benefit. And so you have to apply it in a way that makes sure that they understand that. Being impartial, I was talking about impartiality, long verse there. I'm not going to go into all that, but you can read it there. Varsity wins may keep jobs, but failing to care about lower teams is going to cost you a program and lower athletes. Key players need to be held to the same standards as those younger ones. It's really easy for us to try to cater to our main players because, let's face it, that's what a lot of our actual Friday nights revolve around. But if we do that all the time, you're going to see a separation between those main players and the rest of the team. And the reality of it is, one guy may be able to win a game or lose a game, but in the long run and as a season, and if you're talking about postseason, you need everybody bought in. You need an entire team, and you have to have that entire team bought in. If they don't, and they see all these little fractions because we're treating people a certain way, this person doesn't have to lift this day, or this person doesn't have to run, or I'm not going to, hold them to the same expectations as far as sprints or something. If you let that down or go, then you're going to sever those relationships with those kids. They may not outwardly express it, but it's still going to be there and it's still going to show through play. Refrain from looking down on sub-varsity teams and struggling athletes. Are they going to help you as far as in the future of your program? Maybe. We've had one or two. A lot of times, more than not, no, they're not going to help you as far as a program, and we know this. But the reality of it is the whole reason that most of us or should be in coaching is because not only do we love the game, but we want to make an impact on our athletes. And this is the one where you're going to make the most impact on your athletes. If you can give that love and that care and give that attention to those lower level athletes that probably definitely don't deserve it on the field. But as far as just show them that you care and that you're in their corner, man, that's going to make such a difference for you in the long run. You're going to have these really strong relationships that, you may not even have with your varsity athletes just because they know that you care, that you're there for them. All right. Meaningful work. Your work obviously, hopefully is meaningful, but as far as in the coaching world, obviously we want to make our coaching meaningful, but you want your kids to know that their time is meaningful, that their work is meaningful. Meaning that all drills, it's easy to get on YouTube and see these ridiculous, oh, that looks cool, drills that don't actually relate to, anything that's actually going on the field. And so don't get caught up in fads. Make sure that your drills are meaningful and make sure your kids know why you're doing those drills. Tell them, hey, we're doing this drill because you have to make this cut or because we need to improve on this or this read or whatever it may be. Players need to feel that what they do matters. And so, working towards wins, accomplishing the unexpected, don't be afraid to tell kiddos, that, good job or whatever it may be. And it's easier said than done a lot of times. I actually don't tell the kids enough, but that's mainly because the kids know that through my actions, and we just have those relationships where, like one of the kiddos today, he's at Tech, and I'll still send him a text message, "Hey man, you suck," whenever he scores a touchdown or whatever. because he knows that I care about him and I have that love for him. But that's the main thing, is that, make sure you're just acknowledging them, though, and the things that they do good. So why do you coach? If you lack passion, then your player's going to lack that passion. If you don't care, your players won't care. And that's that way across the board. If you don't care about dress code, your players aren't going to care about dress code. If you don't care about cussing, your players aren't going to care about cussing, or whatever it may be. Showing up on time, whatever. And so what it comes down to is that you have to model that for your kids, and your kids have to understand that what they do matters on the field and off the field. And so that's just something like we do a scout team player of the week, where we'll give them a helmet, a Army helmet for that week, or whatever it may be, just to show them that, we see them out there, we see them working, and we want them to feel like they belong. All right. And having a servant mindset, as far as coming to serve, the largest impacts are created with your players when coaches go beyond what's in our contracts. By occupation, we're called to be leaders because obviously we lead teams, but you're also in charge of those kids. If we put other kids before us, and I think hopefully a lot of us do, then it's going to show. And that's what we've got to have. That's what's really going to matter as far as with their teams. Are they going to go that extra step for you? Why are they going to go that extra step for you if you haven't shown them that you do the same for them? They're kids. And so you have to do that. Actions that go beyond what's required, allowing open communication 24/7. I know some districts frown upon this, but man, allow it, for whatever reason it may be. I've got a kid who sat there and, man, he cried for an hour to me after he got injured last year, his senior year. He's like my kid, but he calls and he knows, because I used to coach him, that I'll still talk to him. And that's the kind of relationship that you have. Open your text message, your communication, whatever, your time. Includes special needs students in your programs. Man, that's a great way to connect the community. We had a kid a couple years back. He scored the opening touchdown of every JV B team football game, and even got to do it in varsity. And man, the crowd goes nuts. And you see that change. You see the change in the community. You get that support there. But man, it feeds off on your kids. And you'd be surprised at how many kids they get impacted by just having these around, these people around. Because, in that, you start seeing the differences of people, but you start seeing that care and the different levels of energy and excitement that a lot of them bring. And man, you'll see a very drastic improvement there. And then unexpectedly meet the needs of student athletes, whether it be, if you see a kid who needs clothes, give them some jackets out of nowhere, transportation if they can't get a ride to school, either set one up or, go pick them up. School supplies, food provisions. My brother down south, man, we had a cold freeze last year. Everything was shut down, and he made sandwiches and went out to all his players' homes and literally delivered sandwiches to his players in need. So just that kind of mindset is going to, go far. And so how can you showcase Christianity to your athletes, especially when you don't want to seem too pushy and you don't want all this pushback from the community? Well, you can just do it subtly. You can read your Bible in the presence of your athletes. I do this, and you'd be surprised at how many people just ask, hey, what are you reading? Oh, you'd read that? Like, it's a foreign concept that, somebody'd actually read it on their own free time instead of just on Sunday. And that gets them interested. Give students opportunities to express their faith. How do you do that? Because you don't want everybody fussing. Just ask them, would you like to pray in position meetings or pregame? I don't think I've ever had anybody say no. Game day devotionals, same thing there. Offer it for the team. If they don't want to come, that's fine. Just have them be able to sit in that locker room if they want and chill out. Offer and promote FCA. It's an awesome program. I know it did a lot for me as far as in high school, but more so when I headed up the FCA program later on. Casually bring up church or God in regular conversations. Hey, my church buddy this, or and something along those lines where, it just perks up curiosity. Wear symbols that express your faith. If they see you wearing a cross like I normally do, but mine broke. But if you see them wearing a cross, hey, you a Christian or you go to church? I've had several people just ask that. And it seems something small or simple, but it's still something that opens up that conversation. With that, I've given you these extra verses here. Like I said, here's mindset. There's words that I post above my desk. If there is anything from the presentation that you need, I'll be glad to email those to you. My email is smithyj, SMITHEY at lisd.net. And I'd be more than happy to continue this conversation on. I appreciate your time, and I hope that you are able to find something that's going to help you grow as a coach and as a program. Thank y'all.